Okay, book review. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, and I felt like I absolutely had to for this novel that I recently read called I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Iain Reid. And you'll notice that that's a kind of a strange title because it's more of like a sentence than a short and sweet sort of title, which is cool. It drew me in. And indeed the title is relevant to the narrative, and in more ways than one. I'll just say that. But my attention was brought to this novel by a friend. A friend of mine recommended me the Netflix series that they're adapting that's coming out in about a week or something, like the first week of September. And I looked into it and I thought the premise looked really interesting, and I saw that it was being adapted from a novel, and I was thinking to myself, whoa, I should read this novel to be prepared for the show. I was interested in the premise because it was like this kind of surreal love story sort of thing, which I'm totally into. It's right up my alley, you know, with some existentialism and philosophy and surrealism and a little bit of horror and creep factor involved in there too. So I downloaded the audiobook from Audible, and I got through the audiobook in like one day, like half a day, because it's only like 5 hours long, which is not that long for an audiobook. Even the print version of this book is like a little more than 200 pages. And I think the author, Iain Reid, wrote this narrative in mind that there would be so many twists and turns that you would want to revisit it and reread it with a different eye for things, a different outlook on like what's really going on. So good for him. It's a really good. It's a hallmark of good craftsmanship in writing to be able to do that. So anyway, what exactly is this book about? So it's a story about a girl who is dating this guy named Jake, and she's thinking of ending things with him. Who would have thought that? So the girl, they're both in like their early 20s or mid 20s or something like that. They're post college, but anyway, they're going to visit his parents, who live on like a farm in the countryside, and so they're on this long car ride together where Jake's driving, and she's having doubts, and she's holding off on like acting on these doubts about their relationship until she at least gives his family a chance or whatever. And she's being patient enough to see through this whole trip. But anyway, she mentions. By the way, we never know this girl's name. She's narrating the story, but she never gives us her actual name. She gives us Jake's name, but she just refers to herself as I or me or whatever. So they're on this long car ride. She mentions how they met, which was at like by the way, her and Jake have only been dating for like 2 or 3 weeks. So anyway, they met at like this quizzo night at a bar or something like that. They're on different teams. They start flirting. He starts impressing her with his literary knowledge and scientific and philosophy. He's this really smart guy, Jake. Really intellectual, kind of a nerdy, awkward guy, but handsome in like a lanky, mysterious sort of way. And so she finds herself attracted to him. He doesn't give her his number right on the spot, but he slips it to her on like a napkin or something, and she ends up calling him, and they end up in a relationship. And 2 weeks later, things are going pretty seriously, and they're visiting his parents. Believable. Things like that happen in real life. And so the narrator, she also goes into a little bit of detail about her own life. She's a pretty normal girl, but she maybe has some anxiety issues, or she's had some trauma going on throughout her life. Like as a child, as a little girl, she used to like, there used to be like a man standing outside of her window every night, or maybe not every night, but at some point during her childhood, there started being this creepy man appearing in her window who says nothing and does nothing, just stands there, maybe watching her sleep. He's in the shadows, so she can't really see who it is. Pretty creepy. That would probably give anyone some trauma if that happened to them as a kid. And then now she's, in her adult years, she's getting these calls from this strange number. Well, it's not a strange number. She's getting strange calls from this wrong number, which is actually her own phone number. So she's getting calls from a phone number that is exactly her number. How does that work, And whenever she picks up the phone, it's like this strange man who seems like he's trying to do a woman's voice, like a high-pitched voice. And he says these cryptic things like, "Oh, the real question will become apparent soon enough," or "You'll find the answers you seek," or whatever. Strange things like that make no sense. She eventually stops answering the phone. She's thinking about reporting it to the police and all this. So there's that going on. So she's thinking about all these things as she's riding up to Jake's parents' house, thinking of ending things with Jake. Jake himself is a little awkward and strange and maybe a little bit questionable. Who knows what he's thinking, he kind of dismisses everything. He kind of explains away everything with, like, academics, basically. He is like he's a scientist who works in a lab or something like that, so that goes along with the territory. So throughout the main narrative, the main narrative is interspersed with these little interludes of two unnamed people just somewhere talking about, like, this murder or suicide, apparently, that happened on the premises of this like a school or some sort of facility like that. It's like, I read it as like a police inspector and the manager of the place, like the principal or somebody like that, talking about this incident. Somebody was found, like, hanging, or was it hanging, or like stabbed or like injured, wounded in a closet wherever they are, the place in question. And so there's sort of like these little mini snippets of this mystery cold case going on, and it doesn't seem to have much to do with anything until the main narrative starts to really get moving, and then things really start to come together and you go, oh, or at least I did. But anyway, Jake and the girl, they finally get to his parents' house. They live on this farm, and the parents, wouldn't you know it, are really creepy and strange. They're like old-fashioned. They dress like they're from the 1950s. The mother has like hearing problems and hears voices in her head or something like that, and all these issues. The father's really apologetic, saying she's really a nice person. She just is going through a lot. The farmhouse itself is filled with, like, antique furniture and everything, and the narrator, like, sees a picture on the wall. Like, there's these weird things, for instance, like this, where she sees this picture and she's like, "Who's that?" And then Jake is like, "Well, don't you know that's me as a kid? It's a childhood photo of me." And she thinks, "Whoa, that doesn't look like Jake as a child. That looks like me." And it's like, why would Jake have looked like a little girl when he was a little kid? So stuff like that, weird pictures and drawings and things like that start popping up in the house as the narrator goes exploring. A lot of the animals in the farm are, like, dead and things like that. It's really weird and unsettling. But they get through it, and then they leave his parents' house in the middle of the night, and then things get even weirder. And like I said, I really don't want to go into any spoiler territory. I never go into real spoilers, like heavy spoilers, in these reviews. I usually just kind of gloss over what would normally be described on, like, the book jacket or whatever. But yeah, they make a few stops, and the narrator starts to realize that it's not just Jake and his parents that are, that are strange and kind of alien-like. It's this whole town. So what's going on here? And eventually the narrator just wants to get home and really end things, but maybe she has a reason not to, or maybe she can't. I don't know. So like I said, I'm not going to spoil whether or not things actually end up one way or the other for her and Jake, or what actually ends up happening. But I will say that everything does come together at the end. This being kind of in my genre of like my train of thought of as a writer, I kind of did predict where it was going by the end, like how Jake and the narrator really relate, what the true nature of their relationship is, why the parents are the way they are, and why the heck this cold case, detective case, is like being presented to us in the middle of the book. And, you know, who the caller is, who the man outside the window is. All these things do come together. There are no loose threads by the end, which I really appreciated. But yeah, I did kind of predict... It's not... I wouldn't say the ending is predictable by any means, but I've read enough fiction like this and written enough fiction like this that I kind of knew where it was going. And maybe me and Iain Reid are like-minded creative minds in the same vein. Which gives me hope for my writing. Maybe it'll sell just as well. I don't know, someday. I can only dream. But yeah, it was really good. I do recommend this book. I recommend it on audiobook too, because the audio, well, let's just say like the performative aspects of being on audiobook does lend itself to the story taking on a whole new meaning once the twist is kind of revealed at the end. Which I thought was really cool. And I will be checking out the Netflix series. It has a pretty good cast. It's got Toni Collette and David Thewlis. David Thewlis was Lupin from Harry Potter, amongst many other roles. Toni Collette was in, well, for instance, like a Hereditary by Ari Estner, and I've seen some reviews of this book compare this story to the works of Ari Estner, like horror movies like that, you know. For me, the whole trip to the parents' house reminded me more of like Get Out, actually, by Jordan Peele. Just because it's like a boyfriend or a girlfriend going to visit their significant other's parents and things ending up really creepy and there being some sort of like agenda that was hidden the whole time. It's not quite exactly this. It's not exactly the same as that, obviously, but that's what it reminded me of. But anyway, yeah, I definitely recommend this. There's a lot to unpack, a lot of unsettling themes. It might keep you up at night, give you nightmares, but it'll also make you think about the meaning of life or whatever, the meaning of relationships, what it means to be an individual who relates to other individuals out there in the world, and how that kind of comes back into like yourself as like a psychological being, and how you can continue to relate to others or not, especially in the context of like a romantic relationship. Yeah, that's about it. I can't wait to see the Netflix series. The trailer made it look really good. It's being directed by Charlie Kaufman, the screenplay is by Charlie Kaufman, who wrote Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is one of my favorite movies, so I'm really looking forward to that. And the cast looks a little different than how I pictured them while listening to the novel, but that's okay. It's his vision, not mine, or whoever was the casting director. But I'm looking forward to seeing that take on this otherwise really fascinating, really engaging story that had me on the edge of my seat. And with that, I'll see you later. I guess you could say I'm thinking of ending this video